America, a land built on the promise of freedom, yet haunted by the weight of its past. From the plantations of the South to the city streets of the modern era, the struggle for equality has never truly ended. Every few generations, it rises again, fierce, painful, impossible to ignore. In 2020, that struggle returned, louder than ever. What began as one tragedy would become a movement that forced a nation to look at itself in the mirror. This is the story of the years when America faced its reflection and the world watched. To understand how it began, we must go back to a country born out of revolution, yet divided from its very start. When the Civil War ended in 1865, slavery was abolished, but prejudice found new ways to survive. The 13th Amendment freed the enslaved. The 14th and 15th promised citizenship and the right to vote. But freedom on paper was not freedom in life. The South built new walls, Jim Crow laws, segregation, intimidation, and violence. Generations lived under the shadow of a promise unfulfilled. Schools were divided, neighborhoods were divided, even hope itself was divided. Then came the Civil Rights Movement. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed aloud before thousands. America seemed to change. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But racism does not disappear. It adapts. By the 1990s, the names changed, but the wounds remained. Rodney King, a beating captured on camera, and a city that erupted in flames. The Los Angeles riots were a warning that injustice had only gone underground. And then, in the new century, it surfaced again. Trayvon Martin in Florida, Michael Brown in Ferguson, Eric Garner in New York. Each became a cry that echoed through every American city, each name a reminder, the past is not gone. And then came George Floyd. It was May 25th, 2020, Minneapolis, Minnesota. A normal day, an ordinary call, a store clerk reporting a counterfeit $20 bill. Within minutes, police arrived. A man was handcuffed on the ground, a knee pressed against his neck. 9 minutes and 29 seconds. He pleaded for air, called for his mother, and the world watched. A 17-year-old girl, Darnella Frazier, filmed it all on her phone. That video spread across the planet in hours. It was raw, undeniable, and it changed everything. The death of George Floyd was not just another story. It was the breaking point of a generation, the spark that lit a nation already soaked in anger, fear, and frustration. Because beneath the grief was something deeper. Exhaustion. The exhaustion of being unheard for centuries. Within days, protests filled the streets. Minneapolis, Chicago, Atlanta, Washington, then London, Paris, Berlin, Sydney. Millions marched under one cry, Black Lives Matter. By some estimates, it became the largest protest movement in American history. 2,000 towns and cities, tens of millions demanding justice. Some marched peacefully, carrying candles and signs. Others faced tear gas, rubber bullets, and curfews. Statues of Confederate generals came down, flags were burned, and on walls across the country, murals of George Floyd appeared, his face becoming a symbol, his last words a message. But the movement also divided the nation. One side saw justice finally rising, the other saw chaos spreading. One side demanded reform, the other demanded order. And caught between them were millions, wondering, what does justice look like in a country built on contradiction? For the first time, a movement like this didn't just live on the streets, it lived online. Social media became both megaphone and battlefield. Number sign Black Lives Matter trended in more than 60 countries. Protesters live-streamed police encounters in real time. A smartphone was now more powerful than a broadcast network. But with this new power came a new danger: false rumors, doctored videos. Truth and lies spread at the same speed. The information war became just as fierce as the one in the streets. The protests collided with a world already breaking under a pandemic. COVID-19 had locked millions indoors. Unemployment soared. Fear filled every headline. And now, cities were on fire. The president called for law and order. Governors called for calm. Mayors pleaded for peace. And yet, the marches grew. It wasn't just about one man's death anymore. It was about what kind of nation the United States wanted to be. The phrase "defund the police" became a lightning rod. To some, it meant reform, rethinking how policing works. To others, it meant anarchy. The divide deepened, and the unrest became the defining image of 2020. But as America struggled, the world responded. In London, protesters pulled down the statue of a slave trader and threw it into the harbour. In France, demonstrators chanted for their own victims of police violence. In Africa, South America, and Asia, people knelt in solidarity. For a moment, the pain of one city became the conscience of the planet. The voice of George Floyd became the echo of generations. Then came justice, or at least a step toward it. April 20th, 2021. After a historic trial, Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all counts. Outside the courthouse, crowds wept, cheered, and prayed. It felt like history bending, if only slightly, toward what was right. But one verdict could not fix centuries of injustice. Other officers faced charges. Congress proposed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, a promise to reform policing nationwide. It passed the House, but died in the Senate. Change, once again, moved slower than pain. Yet something had shifted. For the first time in decades, America was talking, in schools, in offices, in families, about racism, about privilege, about what it means to live in the same country, but in different worlds. Culture reflected this reckoning. Murals and memorials appeared across cities. Songs and documentaries captured the mood. Corporations pledged billions to social justice. Sports stars took a knee before millions of fans. The conversation had finally escaped the margins and entered the mainstream. Still, by 2022, the noise began to fade. The cameras left, the hashtags stopped trending. But in the neighborhoods, the fight continued. Community groups formed. Grassroots movements taught young people about organizing, voting, and empathy. The fire of protest turned into the slow, steady work of rebuilding. And yet, the wounds remained. Police killings didn't stop. Court cases dragged on. Politics kept dividing what people were trying to unite. But something fundamental had changed. Silence was no longer an option. By 2023, America stood at a crossroads again, not of riots, but of remembrance. The world had moved on to other crises: inflation, war, elections. But for those who lived through those nights of 2020, the memory remained vivid. The chants, the fear, the hope, the tears. It's easy to forget how loud the world once was. But history doesn't fade. It waits. And the lessons of those years still whisper through every protest, every debate, every heart that refuses to give up. Every nation must face its reflection. In 2020, America did, and what it saw was both its past and its potential. The unrest of those years wasn't just about color or politics or policing. It was about humanity. The human need to be seen, to be equal, to be heard. Progress in America has always been a slow march, forward, then back, then forward again. But even in that slow movement, there is hope, because every cry for justice, every march, every demand for change moves the story forward, one step at a time. This is not the end of the story. It never is. But it is proof that even in a divided land, people still rise when conscience calls. And that, perhaps, is America's greatest truth, its ability to keep trying, even when it fails. This is Forgotten Fronts, where history isn't just remembered, it's understood.